I was like annoyed with him and unfollowed him. I was like, man, this guy's weird. Like, I'm not doing it. And then you don't think differently until someone like encourages you to start thinking differently. But to anyone that's listening that isn't fully invested in the community, I think you should talk to someone, hit me up in the DM, hit Rob up in the DM. Like, there's so much room for you to experience so much positive that you're doing yourself a disservice by not getting into the community.
VeeFam, what's up? Welcome back to the VeeFam sessions. My name is Mr. Messer, but you can call me Rob, and I'm here with OG VeeFriend and our community's favorite amateur sleuth, Mr. Dalton Tice. Dalty, how are you, buddy?
Very well, very well. I'm so happy to be on here. Just love what you're doing and glad to be a part of it.
Thanks so much for coming on. We had to get the detective on at some point. Probably a few times, but always appreciate your time, and I can't wait to chop it up.
Okay, let's do it. First, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna pray for us, just what we talk about in the conversation, and get into it that way.
Hey, let's go, brother.
All right, dear God, I just thank you for Rob. I thank you for his podcast, and it seems like in today's society, everyone's so focused on themselves and how they can get ahead and what they can do to boost themselves forward. But Rob clearly uses this platform to give others that platform to push themselves forward. It's not about Rob; it's about highlighting other community members and showing what they do in their time in their lives. I just pray that you bless the podcast, continue to bring on amazing guests, tell amazing stories, and just use Rob in the way that you're doing it, because it's clearly making positive impacts in so many lives around us. I just pray that you bless Rob, his family, his children, and that you continue to breathe on the podcast and grow it to where I know you can. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Wow.
Yes, sir.
Wow. That I really appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And it's funny to just hearing that with what's happening in the community this weekend, which we could touch on, but amazing stuff. So before we go any further, let's take a step back. Give us the 55-second Cliff Note version on who you are prior to ever hearing the name Gary Vee.
Okay, so I've knew of Gary Vee for a long time. Followed him for many years. Never really paid attention to it up until really VeeFriends. So before then, was kind of just going through life, figuring it out. Went to college. Just graduated recently. That was after I've been a part of the Gary ecosystem or whatever. But was really just kind of looking at life, like what, again, like kind of what I said, like how can I get ahead? How can I be the best version of me? But it was really all for me, right? I got my real estate license at 19. I got my notary, so I was a court reporter at 18, and I still do that. So it was really, what can I do to set myself up for success? But obviously, as you all know, my religion is a big thing for me, and that's only happened literally since I've been in the Gary ecosystem. And so I had my encounter with God literally at VeeCon 1, in the most unreal way. And so that's why that's such a big cornerstone in who I am now. But before Gary, it's just funny to you ask that, and it's like, not to sound dramatic, but I don't even really remember what I was like, what my goals were, and things like that, because all of it has just completely shifted and completely changed since making God like the number one priority in my life. So it's interesting.
I absolutely, but totally respect it, and I get it too.
Yeah.
Depending on people's situations, when one door closes and you have a new beginning, sometimes it's hard to remember
Right.
what was behind that door, especially if you're, the current chapter and future is much brighter.
Right.
So appreciate it. So well, this is gonna be fun because I know you're on the same level of Vayner nerdism as me. I don't
Yeah.
even know if nerdism is a word, but what's the first, thinking back, what's the first piece of Gary content you remember consuming?
I'm so happy you asked this. I haven't really like publicly talked about this or anything, so it's pretty funny. I don't remember the first piece. I saw him like I'm sure we all did 10, 12 years ago, like always on the social media and Instagram. So 12 years ago, I was 12. So it was about 10 years ago. Um, I just remember I had been following Gary because it was like, oh, if you have Instagram, like you follow Gary. Like I don't know why, like I just was. And then one day, like it's so funny. I remember I was sitting in the back seat of my friend's car, like coming home from the beach. And if you know me, like on a deeper level than just on social media, my memory is kind of crazy. And so I'm very sure of like all the details about it. Like just to remember him coming home from the beach is like crazy. But so I'm in the car and I'm listening with headphones in and I'm scrolling and Gary comes on my screen and he's like, this was when he was much more like aggressively telling you like you're effing up for like lack of a better term. So I just remember he's like what are you doing? Like you gotta go out there and do this and do that. Like you gotta hustle and make some money and do the flip and whatever. And I just remember I was like, Gary, I'm 14 years old. Like what are you talking about? Like this guy. I remember I was like, this guy is annoying, and I like unfollowed him because it was like basically him calling me out to like be better, but like I wasn't at that age to be like, yeah, like okay, other people are allowed to tell me like I could be better outside of like my mom and dad.
Mm, yeah.
Um so I was just like this guy is annoying. Like he's always telling me like I'm not doing enough, like I got to be better like and then a couple of months later I saw something and it like hit me differently. I was like, you know, this guy's actually pretty interesting. It's like I refollowed him and I've been following him ever since. But yeah, it's just funny. Like the first time, not the first time, but the first time I can remember, I was like annoyed with him and unfollowed him. I was like, man, this guy's weird. Like I'm not doing it. And then came back to it. And now it's like the biggest impact on my growth in the past years, obviously besides like finding God, but even because of Gary is what led me to finding God. So it's just I have a lot of love for Gary and a lot of admiration for the community, the things he's built and things like that.
Why do you think why do you think he's had such a big impact on you?
Um just because he's really the first like I never really followed any of the social media gurus like you got to think differently like right? So he was the first one that kind of got me thinking differently because what I've come to learn is you don't think differently until someone like encourages you to start thinking differently. And like both positive and negative, right? And so Gary says, "Oh, if you are upset with yourself or you hate yourself or you're like that is someone else's voice telling you that." And so that's what like initially causes you to go down the path of negative thinking about yourself. Other people have told you that and you kind of believe it and it festers in your mind and grows. Gary was the first to really plant like those good seeds of having empathy, kindness, compassion, those kinds of things. And I was always like a kind person, a kind kid, or whatever. But to really think about like, wow, like we really don't know what someone else is going through. We really don't know how our impact is going to impact them and how big or small that could be depending on how we approach that situation. For how he really impacted me is just like helping me think differently in such positive ways that have allowed me to meet people like you and have great relationships with a lot of individuals that think similarly and just reshape my mind into like the patience like that's such a not common idea of people that want to get ahead. And so before I encountered God and before I was really following Gary's stuff, like I said, I was very ambitious but just trying to like get ahead. And not to say that I was going to go buy a bunch of like materialistic stuff or whatever, but I think there was definitely a part of me that was like, oh, if I can get ahead, I can get a nice car and I can get some things and
Mhm.
whatever. And don't get me wrong, like driving a nice car, if you enjoy it, like that's great. But by understanding like patience, like it's okay to not get it this year. Like build something that you love, like take the pay cut and go do something you love versus like just basically the main topics that Gary presses on. That's the short answer of why I guess I have so much admiration for how he's helped me in my life and changed the way that I view it.
I love that. And for me, it's, it's not even that, you get that, that one speech or him, that one piece of content. He nails so many of these important themes so
Mm-hmm.
many times in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Often he says, like, if I get one person to hear this and like
Yeah.
act on it, I've won, or
Mm-hmm.
this was worth it. So it's very interesting to hear people's perspective on just how they consume, and what kind of what string that Gary pulled,
Yeah.
what thread Gary pulled in that particular time in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, so much great content, and you've been following around for a while. We get to winter, early spring 2021. He starts telling people, NFTs are coming. Get a MetaMask.
Mm-hmm.
Don't share your seed phrase. All the things. Talk to me about your early thoughts about what this was. Did you have any crypto background, or were you kind of learning with the community that was onboarded through VeeFriends?
So I had a little bit of crypto background, nothing crazy, but just kind of basic trading, ETH, and maybe the altcoins and things like that. Because my friend got me into it one summer. He started and kind of showed me, and so whatever. I remember my first purchase was like ETH at literally like $400, and I was like, oh, this was not gonna go up so fast. Like I was just learning like the basics of like, is this more stable, like slow and safe and whatever. And at the time I was like, oh, people are making millions of dollars in crypto. Like ETH isn't the play right now. Like I need to go like flip some stuff. So whatever. That was my initial background of crypto. When I first heard of NFTs, I didn't even know that NFTs were like crypto at all, right? So like I said, I wasn't really listening to Gary's content at all. Like I just followed him and liked some stuff and whatever. And then I just remember I'd be sitting scrolling Instagram and Gary would be talking and all of a sudden like a little inchworm would like crawl across the screen or like a little drawing of like a bird would, and I was like, what what is happening? Like what is this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Like I can't even I just didn't get it. Like I didn't take the time, the 40 hours of homework, right? I didn't lean into the curiosity of like, what if? I was just like, this is kind of ridiculous. Like I don't even understand it. I don't even care to understand it. Then I got into NFTs because not this person I know is a friend of my brother's was posting, and I remember he was posting NFTs, whatever, and I would see, and this was when I was on Twitter, and I followed less than like 100 people and had less than 100 followers, so I didn't really use Twitter at all. The only reason I do now is because of NFTs and crypto Twitter. But so I remember he minted a koala intelligence agency. I don't know if you know anything about that,
I
but
I I grabbed one of those.
yeah,
It was one of the few that I grabbed
okay.
in that
And
era. That's so
so
funny.
yeah, so he minted three of those, and I remember Gary was talking like, "Oh, I think the koalas are gonna be good or whatever." But he minted one of the more rare ones. Back then, like rarity tools was like the thing. Like, oh,
Yeah.
if you had a high rarity, like you generational wealth, like you've made it. It's like so for me, I remember he minted like in the top 100, like 100 to 200 range of like a 10,000 unit project. And I remember him saying like, oh, this is worth X amount of money or whatever. So I just randomly wrote him. I was like, so tell me about these koalas. And so he kind of talked to me about it, whatever, whatever. And then I thought like, oh, like, I don't know. I think I'm pretty lucky. Like maybe I could like basically just hit it big, like pick a project, mint like a rare like 101 or something like that. And I just have generational wealth. I was like, this is like ridiculous. Well, why not a little bit? So I did ga- gambled. Like people like to basically disguise that the fact that like NFTs for the most part is like degenerative gambling if you're not aware of what you're doing. But
100%.
they disguise it as investing because it's like crypto, but it's the same thing as like hitting on a slot machine if it's going to be good or bad. And so that was like my I don't gamble. I don't go to the casino. I don't play slots. I don't do any of that. But I think we all have that in us to want that like quick win or like that dopamine, like, oh,
Yeah.
I hit it, right? And so this, I think at the time, I didn't realize it, but now I'm able to tell you, like, that was my gambling. Like, I didn't gamble with losing money, but it was crypto. And it's so sick because it's so much easier to be disguised because you can convince yourself so much more that it's not gambling. Because at the time everybody was just winning. Oh, I minted this and flipped it for this and took the profits and rolled it into that. And so for me, it was like, oh, this is just so easy. Turned out it wasn't so easy. And so I joined the VeeFriends Discord at the time, but I wasn't really involved in it. And then I got into just the Discord. I remember asking some questions, never really talking into it. And then I got into it around book games. Uh, Grabbed a couple of books, minted a couple of those, and then ended up minting some VF2s. Um, didn't really get into the community until after VeeCon 1. So like I didn't know, like we all know the magic of the VeeFriends community. Great people, great connections. There's just so much there. You could talk about it for hours. I didn't know any of that really existed, because in the NFT space it was all about the money, and then this one kind of opened my eyes like, whoa, like there's real value in community. Um, and so I didn't get into the community until after VCon 1. Had an unreal experience, like I said earlier. Just met so many amazing people, and then that was like, okay, this is my group of people. Just they all see things the way I do, care about one another. And so that was the push for me to get into the VeeFriends ecosystem and community and thing like
Like the
that.
next step.
Yeah.
So just to take a step back a sec. So what made you just had a pulse on everything and you saw Gary's like 8 hour stream and bought into book games in that
Yeah.
August?
So I just remember he was like, "Oh, you don't want to miss this, whatever." I just remember at the time, like this is how green I was to NFTs. He was like, "Oh," and I remember projects were airdropping things. So like airdrop was like a huge word. It was like, "Oh, if you're getting airdrop something,
Yeah.
like you like yes." Like so then he was saying for every 12 books you buy, like wink wink, like you're going to get airdropped something. Like didn't really
Yeah.
see what it was, but I was like, oh my gosh, an airdrop, like I need to do it. Like, so I ended up buying 12 books because at the time I was like, I don't really know anything about it. I'll just get one and whatever. And then he said something about the Barnes and Noble extra boost. So I was like, oh, like now I need like the Barnes and Noble boost. Like I went and got like 12
Yeah.
more there. And then I remember my friend, I was telling him about it, and he was like, "Oh, like don't be crazy. Like don't buy a bunch of books. Like we don't know like what this is gonna do." And I'm like, I wish I bought a bunch of books like at the time and then flipped it
Mhm.
for whatever. But there's always what ifs. So yeah, so I saw that, and that was my first real introduction to VeeFriends. Like I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anyone that worked for VeeFriends. I didn't. I just like okay, get the books and see what happens. So that was like the introduction.
And I know I lately there's been a lot of new people entering the ecosystem and I've gotten
Mhm.
a lot of good feedback of people learning the history of what's happened through these conversations. So just to give people if you miss this era, get an August, sometime in August of 2021, the ETH is white hot, VeeFriends are white hot, like, and it was, if you didn't have a V1, like I didn't have a V1, I was like, man, like it's just felt so far away, like
Right.
50, 40, 50, $60,000 for the floor. And so Gary goes on streaming on all of his accounts, Instagram, wherever, maybe it was just Instagram, but he
It
probably
was
bounced
YouTube
around.
too, because
Yeah,
that's what I was
YouTube.
watching, YouTube Live.
And it was like a multi-hour like QVC thing where he just kept on talking about this book and this opportunity, and I don't remember the window, but it was like a, oh my goodness, like I'm not going to miss this, because
Mhm.
if you fumbled on V1, like this was your chance to get in the
Right.
ecosystem. And to your point, the wink wink, like he couldn't say like you're going to get an NFT, but it was essentially for every 12 books, you're going to get an NFT. So that's why people ended up with, garages full of
Yeah.
books. So just wanted to connect the dots there for
Mhm.
people. So you get your book games. How did you end up at, what was your conviction to go to get a ticket to VeeCon 1?
Okay.
And let's hear about your experience, because it sounds like it was a game changer for you as far as in many ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So I remember this was when the book games exchange was like super new and no one really like exchanged anything and people were kind of figuring it out and learning it and whatever.
Mhm.
So I just remember at the time I had four book games and I just remember Gary saying like wood burns best. And I was like, okay. So I had two wood frames. My This other friend of mine that I knew had two wood frames like in his collection. He bought a bunch of books. And then I bought another one, so I had five. So I traded him my two random ones for two woods. Now I had five woods because I remember Gary said you were gonna need five. So that was my plan. And at the time, like it's just so crazy thinking because had I had been in the community, somebody would have just given me a VeeCon ticket at the time. And so for those, I guess, like just to paint the picture for those that don't know, you bought a VF1, VF1 then becomes you get airdropped three tickets, one per year to go to VeeCon. And I didn't have a VF1. So I was like, how am I going to get to VeeCon if I don't have a VF1? And so Gary was giving away VeeCon tickets out of his wallet, which were the goos, and they were only able to be received if you burned book games for your VeeCon ticket.
And from what I remember, there were different ones. It was a
Right,
week long kind of activation, and
right.
every day it would be a different rarity
It
and
would
frame
be different rarity and even
and
go up
number.
in number. So it would just
Yeah.
get more and more expensive. So I was like, okay, I need to get five woods. And so that's what I did. And so I kind of paint the picture with how you get there because I could at the time book games were at about point four. Let me just make sure my math. Yeah, point. Wait a minute. Yeah, they were at about $2,000
For a book game,
for a book game.
I think that seems high,
No,
because I remember, I think it may have been like I think they were somewhere in the ballpark of $500 to $700 per
they got to almost a point five floor,
per floor.
and ETH was around 4 grand.
Interesting. For floor, not just in a
Yeah,
given
because
frame.
this was when VF2 mint was happening.
Oh yeah.
And
So
so it went crazy because if for every book game, it was like a 13% chance that you would get selected
yeah,
for a V
the
or
friends list,
a 26% chance, I think it was, to
the
get a friends list. So
friends
that's
list.
why
Yeah.
they went crazy. Because I just remember I had burned $10,000, five book games for a VeeCon ticket. And I remember that people were buying some of the goo tickets at like 3.5 ETH,
Yeah.
4 ETH, and VeeCon 1 tickets were at like 2.5 ETH, which is just crazy. But I say that to I bought a VeeCon ticket for 10 grand, and had I had known about the community and how great it is, and people have a bunch of extra VF1s and a bunch of extra tickets, they would have just given me one and or just given me the access or whatever. So I say that for anyone that's listening that is not in the community or has kind of dipped their toes in, there's no reason to not get in. Like, there is so much good that comes out of the community that you're doing yourself a disservice by not diving into it. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying that you have to make a crazy financial investment into VeeFriends because I guarantee you 90% of the people that watch this already know who I am. And that's just
99 at least.
I'd say at least. And so for me, I say that to prove that you can make an impact in the community and be well known without actually owning a VF1. I don't own a VF1. I've never owned one. It's been a goal of mine. I'm working towards it,
How did I?
but I want to I want it to be a good one, a spec, a gift code, something like that. But exactly right. Like you, like you're doing this and making great content, having great interactions, but you don't have a VF1. And so Gary has said from the beginning, you don't need to buy in. I think Gary believes in the project and would love to see you buy in. But to anyone that's listening that isn't fully invested in the community, I think you should talk to someone, hit me up in the DM, hit Rob up in the DM. Like there's so much room for you to experience so much positive that you're doing yourself a disservice by not getting into the community.
100%. Yeah. I mean, from episode 1 of this, May 22 or May or June 22, that's been a theme in most of the conversations I've had. Like, you don't need anything in your physical or digital wallet to be a part of it. You
Right.
just need to, live by the
The
the,
unwritten code.
bylaws of be a bigger person, and
Right.
and the people that don't really stay long.
Right.
Um, so it's May 22, and first of all, to your point, going back in time, taking the ogre time machine back to May 22, nobody even knew what VeeCon was going to be, and nobody
Right.
even knew what the ticket dynamics were going to be.
Right.
There was just so much up in the air. Aside from a few like well edited like pump up trailers, like we just didn't know. And then
Mhm.
speakers came out, whatever. But let's talk to us about your experience at
Okay.
VeeCon One in
First,
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
first, I want to go back and just because remember you said what was the push to getting there, and
Yes.
so I kind of knew who Gary was, like liked his content, knew he was like some celebrity, whatever, and it was just blowing my mind. Like this guy actually responds to people in the Discord of that kind of status and that kind of busy schedule and that kind of whatever is doing that. And so that was just so different to me. And I was like, I wrote in the Discord and I wasn't into it, like wasn't really involved like I am. And I just randomly said like, "Hey Gary, I'm 22 years old at the time, I think. I'm about to burn these these book games for a ticket to VeeCon. Like, do I do it?" And I had never traveled alone. I had never been to a conference. Like, so me, I'm thinking again, like I didn't see any of the pump up trailers. I didn't know anything, and so I'm thinking like it's some business conference, like people are gonna be like in suits and we're just gonna be kind of like walking around from like because I knew it was in Minnesota where the Vikings play, but I thought it was just gonna be like kind of like at the club level, like just have a bunch of people talking about business things, and I was like, I don't know, I'll just like try it, have a good time like with myself, like if anything, and we'll see what it is. And so it was completely different than everything I thought it was gonna be, for the much better. But Gary actually responded to it and said like, "Can't wait to see you there." So I was like, "Oh, like, all right, I guess I'm gonna burn them now." Like he just told me like he can't wait to see me there and whatever. So burn them, and that was like the push. Had he not responded, I may have just talked myself out of it. Like I may have
Mm.
just been like, like it's too much. I don't know where I'm staying and whatever. So I had planned to make it as cheap as possible, fly as cheap as possible, get some Airbnb as cheap as possible, like walking distance and just kind of whatever. And then I had another friend that I found out was going, so we ended up going and I stayed with him and whatever. But it probably would have been very sketchy me wherever I was going to be at the cheapest Airbnb around. So I'm very grateful to him for that. But yeah, so that was had he not answered, I may have not gone to VCon 1, which
Mm.
is just crazy to me to even think about because that's where I had my encounter with the Lord and I wouldn't want that to be any different. So it's just crazy to me how the small details and the small actions we make like ultimately lead us to where we're going to go.
What was while you were there? What was the most surprising? You went in thinking it was going to be this conventional conference. What was a big like aha or like something that sat with you?
So the biggest aha was I was walking to VCon. Like I remember Gary was like, doors open at 8 or whatever, doors open at 8:15, like doors open at 9, get there at 8:15 or something like that. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna get there at 7 just to kind of see what happens. And this was when I was kind of going through my search for God, and I was going to church for on and off for like a couple of months. Like whenever my sister is the biggest reason why I started looking into it, and so I would go when she would come into town and whatever. So I was working on my relationship with God and believed in whatever, but never really had that testimony where you hear people tell crazy stories and whatever. So I was basically talking with God. I was like, look, and I never wake up through the night. Like I could sleep all day long if I wanted to. And so I said, God, like, just let me find my people. Like, it's very hard for me where I live. It seems very superficial. People aren't really caring about other people. It's more about how much money you got, who you know, things like that. And that's just not really my vibe. And so I said, God, just let me find my people. And sure enough, like, as you see where I'm at today, it's pretty, pretty eye opening that these are my people. Um, and so I said, look, if I'm gonna wake up, I'm setting my alarm for 6. If I need to be up earlier, wake me up earlier. And sure enough, I woke up at like 5:35 in the morning, and I was like, okay, like that is interesting. So I got up and go. And as I'm walking to VeeCon, some guy comes walking like on the other side of the street in a gift goat jacket. And like at the time, I didn't know what gift goat was. I just knew I saw people wearing the jackets the day before. So I was like, oh, like that's like a cool section of VeeFriends, like or whatever. So I knew the jacket, and so I was like, yo, like me, I'm like, are you going to VeeCon? It's like, yes, he's going to VeeCon. Like he's wearing a gift goat jacket, walking
Pro
to
trendy
VeeCon.
style.
But so he's like, yeah, like are you? I was like, yeah. So he comes over, walks across the street, and I wait for him. And I'm like, yo, like what's your name? And he's like, oh, like my name's Danny. And so it turned out it was Danny Meadows. And so we just met there. Um, and he just like told me everything about VeeFriends, introduced me to so many people in the community. Um, and to hear like his story just touched me so much. Like Danny's the homie. Literally my first like VeeFriend, we ended up spending 95% of VeeCon 1 together, and we literally just met like by chance. Um so that was the aha moment. And so like I said, well that's what led to the aha moment. So for me, I've been kind of on my own like financially for a long time, not paying rent or anything like that in high school, but when I'm out of high school, paid for my college, was working um in high school for my basketball coach. Like I would have them pick me up, drive me to work. I was running like the score and the shot clock, just making money um to pay for food for like my family and things like that, my brothers and sisters. So it was very selfish ambition, like no one's really doing it for me. Like I need to do it for me. Right. And so without having God, it's like it's all up to you. So for me at VeeCon, I remember I wanted to sit like front row. Like me and Danny got there super early. We were gonna sit front row. And I didn't know anything about the limited merch. I mean, were you at VeeCon one?
Yes.
So you know about the hoodies.
I've,
So
uh,
I didn't know anything about the hoodies. And everyone just boom, it opens and everyone just starts running. And I'm like, where is everybody running to? Like all of the seats are that way and everyone's running this way. And so I was almost like, well, these people are stupid. Like I'm just gonna go grab front row seats.
Mhm.
But I was like, no, they know something I don't know. I'm just gonna follow the pack and whatever. So Danny went and got front row seats. And so I went and grabbed a hoodie. And so it was only one per. But Danny, if you know anything about him, been through a terrible motorcycle accident, and so has really bad leg, and so he was not going to be able to run down
Mhm.
the stairs and grab a jacket. But it opened my mind, like I was able to grab a jacket, and then I ended up getting him merch before what piece ended up selling out. Um, but I ended up getting him merch and me a jacket, and then I got to sit front row because of like the power of community. And so that was like the aha, like, oh my gosh, like life isn't meant to be done alone. Like I'm not
Mm.
supposed to just white knuckle this like by myself, provide for myself. Oh, I'm gonna make a bunch of money and that's gonna like solve like my problems and financial problems, relationship problems. Like it just opened my mind like, whoa. And not to say that what Danny went through is like anything like lighter or rough, like for lack of a better term, but because of Danny's circumstance, that is like we can look at it as such a negative. It ended up being like such a blessing for me, and not to say like, oh, I want to like win off someone's like negative, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
I totally
there's
get you.
always good in what we want to think is bad, and like God can use the negative and the bad for evil. Give me a second. And look at that, Danny Meadows calling me on cue
That's funny.
on Discord. That's crazy. Um, so yeah, so that was like the aha moment. Like, whoa, we can get so much more out of life coming together and like covering each other's backs than we can get even close to it
I
just by
love that.
ourselves.
I love that. And P.S. Sunday morning, I went to sleep early that Saturday of VeeCon 1.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday morning, it was like low energy. It was stayed up way too late Friday night. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to sleep early. It's the last day. I'm going to make the most of the last day. And I was in like the top 10 in line. I met Danny right in line. I probably met you if you were with him.
I think so. I was.
And I heard about his story and everything, and it was so captivating. But that you brought me back there to the front of that line. Awesome. That's so awesome. That's such an awesome anecdote for this meta concept that just kind of highlights how special our community actually is.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go a little bit later that summer on July 30th, 2022. You tweeted, "If you are a V, do whatever you have to do to be at the National in Chicago in 2023. I can't even begin to explain how unreal this week has been, but trust me, you will want to be there. Go make friends." Talk to me about your, and I remember this with the letter and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me, give me the TLDR on your national experience. And this is the first time that VeeFriends is showing up there. I
Right.
think TNC is released,
Right.
but
No
still has,
gameplay besides war.
yeah, still hasn't really taken the community by storm the
Right.
way it is now in February of 2024.
Right.
So talk to us about the experience.
So, and then I want to go back to a little bit of stuff about VeeCon, just to kind of get into the major impacts that's had, with the national. So like it's just so crazy. I never heard of the national. Like all this stuff is like completely new to me, so I've never heard of it. I just remember how amazing VeeCon one was. Where I was like, okay, like the national, like they're gonna be there, like why not? Like, and so at the time, I was super like keen, for lack of a better word, on wanting to work for VeeFriends. And so, but not even actually, that's not true. Not wanting to work for VeeFriends, just wanting to get a close relationship with Gary because of what I had experienced at VeeCon and seeing him interact with so many people and the community he's built. Because have have wanted I want to do similar things like he does. I want to inspire a lot of people. I want to make positive impacts in the world. I want to use a platform and grow it for positivity and speak and do things like that. And so there's a lot of things that Gary has accomplished that I'd I'd love to do. Um and so I was listening to the Gary Vee podcast and whatever. And so Gary, they say they're going to the national. And so I'd never heard of it, never in a sports card, never anything. And so Gary just says, if you can go to the national, you should be there to everybody, publicly and whatever. And so I just remember looking up. I was sitting in my room looking up flights, like, oh, like what? well, no, I was looking up the dates. Like, what is this? Like, whatever. Looked it up, and it was like a 5 day thing. And so I was like, okay, Gary's going to be there for the whole 5 days, whatever. So I write in the Discord at Gary, I can book a round trip flight for $100. Do I do it? And Gary said yes, and I'll give you back the $100 when I see you. And I was like, what in the world is happening? Okay, so I didn't want like prices to change or anything, and I'm like freaking out on like the FOMO and whatever. And so I just like book a flight for 7 days because I wanted to get there the day before and then leave the day after. And I had no idea where I was staying. So I booked my flight for 7 days. And so I call my friend. I'm like, hey, because I remember he lives in Philly. And I was like, hey, like, if by chance it's like not possible for me to stay with anyone else, could I stay with you? And so I was going to drive from like Philly to the national like day. That was my plan. Like maybe borrow a car. Like what I'm very resourceful. Like if there's a will, there's a way, and like I like just figure it out. So he goes, well, no, you can't stay with me, but I've done like some gambling, whatever, at the Borgata in Atlantic City. I can like comp you a room for 2 nights. So I was like, great. At least I'll get there, I'll land, take an Uber to the Borgata, and I'll be there for the night, and then I'll go to the National, be there for the next night. And if nothing happens, whatever, I'll just change my flight and fly back if it's terrible. So I flew out there, stayed at the Borgata, but as I'm flying out, I'm kind of like, I don't know, like this is not the same vibes as VeeCon. Like I flew out there excited. I met people in the airport that were going, so I already had friends that were gonna be at VeeCon. Um, and so it was just a lot more like I knew what I was getting into. Here, I had no idea who was going, no idea what it was about, no idea where I was staying.
Right.
I was just like, Gary said he'll pay me back for the flight, so like I'm just showing, I'm just gonna do it. But I'm getting like bad vibes, just not great. I'm talking to people that have like sports card collector like bags or whatever, and so I'm like talking to them, thinking that they're gonna like reciprocate the same love that like VeeFriends do. I'm like, oh, so you guys going to like the national or whatever? Like, yeah, whatever, talking, and then they just like leave. I was like, oh, like see ya, like whatever. So I get to the Borgata, check in, and start walking in like to go to my room, and I'm like, I don't know, like I think I made like a huge mistake. I remember I think I even called Danny and like my girlfriend and some people. I was like, I don't know, like this just feels so wrong. Like it was bad. And so as I'm walking, I see this group of people, and one of them's wearing a fly fish hat. And so I just remember I had no idea what fly fish was. I just remember Gary was like wearing that hat all the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are people from VeeFriend, like in the community that are going, that this could be the group that I kind of get together with and have some friends. So they're all talking, and I just walk up and tap the guy with the fly fish hat. I was like, "Oh, are you guys going to the national?" And he turns around, and it's literally Gary. And I was like, "Holy crap! Like what?" And he's just like, "Oh hey," like, and I was like, "Oh, that's so this is crazy." Like I was just freaking out. I was like, "I'm the one." He's like, "I know who you are," and I was like, "Wait, what?" Like it just blew my mind. So he's like, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. So I was like, whoa, like okay. So I went
You're
up
not leaving now.
huh?
You're not leaving now. You're in
No,
it.
no. So now I go up to the room. The whole thing has changed. I'm calling Danny. I'm like, scratch that. This is insane. Like you'll never guess what just happened. So I'm like freaking out in my room. Because this time, at the time, I was very like it was still very new, like who Gary was. I only met him like a couple times at VeeCon. Um, so it was still very like new and fanboy-y. So it was just crazy. Now I have, I think, much more of a friendship level of understanding like who he is. He knows who I am and whatever. So it's grown. I've grown out of the shell shock of seeing him. Um, but at the time I wasn't. So, and I wanted to talk to him about, like I said earlier, just getting in the circle, getting some advice, just that mentorship from him, things like that. Like I had no idea what I was even asking. I just knew I wanted it, whatever it was. Um, so I get to the national the next morning, and I don't want to spoil it, just in case if anyone wants to read it. I wrote a whole story about it. So I
Yeah,
don't
I will
want
definitely tag it up.
to, okay. So I don't want to get it too far into detail, but basically, I show up and I'm like, "Hey Gary, there's a lot of things that I want to talk to you about. Like when can we do it?" And he's like, "Come, like be the first person here tomorrow in the morning, and we'll talk." And I was like, "Okay." So that day went off, and I didn't go anywhere besides like the VeeFriends booth. I wasn't there for anything besides the VeeFriends booth. Um, and like it's just so crazy. There's so many different things. Like just a little sidebar. Everyone at VeeCon 1 had been talking to each other for a year now. And so when they got there, that was like a whole reunion. So people are like, "Oh, you're XYZ Panda 4." Like, yeah, that's me. Like freaking out and whatever.
Right,
And I'm
right.
just like, what is happening? Like, how do you all know? Like, this is like, and me like walking around with Danny, and they're like, "Oh, you're Danny Meadows," and I was like, "Who am I walking next to? Like, what is going on?" Um, so for me, the national was my first time of people knowing who I was before I got there. So it was just like so trippy because that was my first interaction of having a relationship with people and having people know who you are from social media. And so,
Mm,
because I had never really been involved, so someone came up to me like, "Yo, like you're Dalton, right?" And I was like, "Yes." Like, how do you know me? But at the time, nobody really had. This was 2022. At the time, nobody really had profile pictures of their face. It was just their NFT. Um, but me, I've always had my picture as my face because I wanted people to recognize like me when I tweeted something, me when I'm out at these events. I wanted that so that way people feel comfortable when they see me. They know the face behind the tweets, right? And
sure. I can understand that.
so for me, like when I met Gary the first time, it was like so natural, like so weird because I felt like I already knew who he was and we've already met because I've seen him through social media. And so that's what I wanted to be inviting for people to come up to me and have that friendship and whatever. And so that kind of stuff happened and it was just weird for me to experience it actually coming to life. So then I go back to the national the next morning. We talk, me and Gary, for about like 5 minutes, which is just crazy if you know Gary and you getting a minute
Yeah.
of his time one on one is ridiculous. Um, so we're sitting there talking, and I'm telling him, "Look, I listen to the Gary Vee podcast every day. You were talking in oh man, in an episode. Now I forget who it was. I just had it, but with somebody and said basically get close to your source. So if you want to become a photographer, go find a photographer that does what you do
Yeah.
and go learn from them. So for me, it was like I want, like I said, want to be somebody like Gary. And so I was like, where else am I gonna go than just go ask him to like shadow him around? Like I don't know what this is gonna look like, whatever.
Mm,
So that's kind of what I talked to him about. And he said, "Okay, so you want an internship?" And I was like, "Okay, like I guess, right?" Like, and so he's like, "All right, so I'll be on a flight tomorrow night. Send me an email of your resume and the things you're good at, things you're bad at, and I'll give it a real look." So I'm like, "All right, great." So I'm like hyped, like, "Oh, Gary's gonna see my resume. Like, I'm gonna get an internship, whatever." The next day, Gary and the VeeFriends team get just swamped. Like, there is so many people around. There's not enough people
to help.
doing stuff. And the day before, I had asked Gary because people were ripping packs in the back, some of his high school friends and things like that. And I was like, oh, like kind of joking, like, oh, how do they get that job? Just like sit there and rip packs all day, like that seems fun. And Gary's like, oh, like that's the right job to ask for. And I was like, I know, like I'd love to do it. And so the next day, when they're swamped, I guess someone was supposed to show up and help and didn't, or thought they were whatever. They were short staffed. And so out of the crowd, Gary just kind of like looks at me and like points at me, and I'm just like me, and he's like, yes. I was like, what? He's like, come here. And I was like, it's happening. Oh my God. So I'm like freaking out. So I like come around the back and they're like, all right, like tell him what he's got to do. So I'm just basically sleeving cards. And so the people that are helping Gary rip the packs, like his high school friends and stuff like that, and they don't know anything about like what's a good character, what's a bad character. But
Mhm.
me, I knew it all. And so I was telling them like, oh, like put this in this pile, do this in that pile. So I kind of took initiative of that little group, sleeving them up,
Right.
whatever. We end up sleeving all the cards. And so me, I'm thinking like, well, I'm already in here. I'm not just gonna like see myself out. Like I'm gonna see what else they need help with. And so I kind of walk up to the table and I'm just like helping people because I'm already knowledgeable and educated on what VeeFriends is. So I'm helping people buy packs or buy individual cards or just basically doing what we see them do at the national. And it was just so like seamless. And so I went from wanting to not be there to literally selling and like at the time and still is, but VeeFriends the series 1 boxes were kind of new, and so they were selling at $4,000 a box, which if you know anything now, that's crazy cheap.
Mm.
Um, but so I went from not wanting to be there to literally standing next to Gary selling V1 cards to people on the other side, and it just like blew my mind. Um, and there's a bunch of little stories in there, and if you
That's
want to read
really
the
dope.
whole thing, but
Such a cool story.
yeah,
And I will pin up the you wrote a long thread about it, so
right,
people that are interested could check it out.
hmm
Um, it feels like so far so long ago, although it's not even 2 full years ago.
right,
Um, so you since then have really tapped in not only to the big flagship events like VeeCon, but the other takeover events, and you even were part of throwing a takeover event at this most recent national
hmm
in Chicago in 2023. As far from a community, it's a community initiative, community thrown events for the community by the community.
right,
For someone that was not even a part of it, a year
right,
prior to that,
right.
just chat a little bit about how that experience was and just kind of being able to host the party.
Right. So shout out to Katz and what she's doing with Takeover. It's amazing. People love it. It You can always expect there to be something, and it just adds an extra nugget to everyone's trip and everyone's plan. Just another excuse to get out there and be with the community. And so if you know me, you know how much I love the community, how much love I have for everyone in it. Um, how much I love the things that come out of the community. Even the other day, like Soggy gifting a VF2, which led to like a ripple effect of like 5 other people gifting VF2s. Like that stuff is just not normal. I Katz wasn't going to the national, and I was just like, hey, there's not really any events being talked about. Like I kind of want to throw an event. I want to like pick your brain. This is me talking to Katz, like about throwing an event. Like what does it take? How do I do it? Things like that. And she was like, oh well, like I'll just like why don't I just come and we just do a takeover event? So I was like, all right, like sick. I went to the takeover event in Art Basel before, and so we just kind of linked up and grew. Me and Katz would be on literally 4 hour phone calls, just like setting stuff up, planning things. So I got incredibly close to Katz. Um, but yeah, just offering another space for VeeFriends to meet. And what was amazing is there were people that showed up that weren't in VeeFriends that got word of the event that bought tickets and showed up and were able to be like introduced to the community that way. And then it was
Amazing.
amazing to see Gary and Andy and D-Rock and the whole gang show up at some points throughout it all. Gary spoke a little bit, which was not expected. Um, and so yeah, just to see so much positive come out of it, and for me to learn so much about the events, which I think played a big role in the event that I've recently held in December for the toy drive that I did. Um, so yeah, just learning things and using the things that I'm passionate about as excuses to learn more. Um, and so I'm super grateful to Cats for going on that journey with me and throwing a successful event, and yeah, just being a part of it was amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, it is so nice to have another option to go to when you're going to uh, an event
Mhm.
that you know you're going to see VeeFriends. One of my favorite events ever was that Miami takeover.
Yeah.
Such a great job. Somewhere along the way, you got the name Detective Dalton. Um, you are very observant. You're an observant oyster in the community, um, watching and putting your thoughts together like a detective. I'm curious what was the and there's been a bunch of theories, and you put out these great videos. But I'm curious, what was the first Detective Dalton video, or maybe the first time you like said you had that hat on, like, okay, I'm gonna think of this and be a
Um,
detective, if you remember.
the first one, I think the first one that comes to mind was with like the tiny time machine ogre, time machine tiny ogre. I kind of pieced together like there's 15 ogres and there's 15 new characters. So I think there's going to be a play with getting maybe a series 1 out of the new characters, but there'll be like literally a one of one of one because there's it's going to be a spec and it may have to go off the background of the ogre that you have, but for the alpha alligator, there's not going to be cores and rares and very like it's just going to be one series 1 alligator. Um, so that was my first thought.
Is that still your theory?
Something similar that they haven't given any detail on the ogre or anything like that. I know Gary has said no more series 1. So
Hmm.
I don't know, but I don't know how else they're going to provide the value of people, not to say that they have to, but people bought the ogres at like 130 grand a piece, like obviously all speculation, but I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how they provide the value there. I pride myself in being as accurate and as sure as possible before I make videos and content and things like that. But I want to, if give me a second, I want to see the first video. I can find it pretty quickly, I think.
And I'll definitely pin it up and attach it to anything we do here. Uh, yeah, that you kind of took my next question of, how much time do you spend investigating before you kind of put it out? Because you are known as Detective Dalton now, which a lot of people appreciate.
Yeah. I
Um,
can't even find it. I don't know why. But I remember I just the oldest thing that comes up was when and this isn't definitely where I got it from, but there was like a Kahoot game when Ross was doing like that 4 series 1 box break, and then I ended up winning as Dalton. I got second place, but then first place was Gary Vee, but it was just me on another account named
I
Gary
remember
Vee.
that. That
Um,
was funny.
so that was funny. But yeah, I don't remember the first one, but I think the biggest video that kind of cemented it was my submission for Burn Island with the Snoop Dogg collab
Hmm.
for the event in Atlanta. I thought I put together a pretty good video of me basically piecing together a bunch of information. I still think it's a great video where I took on the detective role, and I don't know, I just have fun with it. I kind of took a break from it, and then I hopped in a Twitter space randomly, and Jeremy was in it, and he was like, like I'm very disappointed that like we haven't heard much of like Detective Dalton, and I was like, oh, like all right, like I guess I need to kind of embrace this, and a couple other people were like you're really good at this, like you really should embrace this, and if you have the time to like make the videos, like why not? And to kind of just re-sparked that for me. And I think one of the better videos I did was one of the recent ones, um, with the paper hands pony.
Mm,
So that was
yeah.
interesting.
And you called out the time machine, the tiny ogre time machine uh shirt. too.
Right.
You found that.
Right.
So there's some talent there.
Yeah.
I love the character. Right or wrong. I'm always a big fan of characters. I love the Josh versus Tom content
Mhm.
from Cardboard Summer. I just think it's good. It's just nice popcorn fun
Right.
to have. So, but yours are double the fun for me because I do like the clues. Like I loved book games master Gary, and you alluded to it before when he would kind of leave clues and have fun.
Mhm.
From his ivory tower, just
Yeah.
watching everything take place, and
Mhm.
it's fun to kind of speculate to not even what something is going to be, but just like his frame of mind. Like if I like, did he just randomly gift Tom a
Right.
Ray Bison, or did he like think through it? But the answer is probably like usual, both.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I want to quickly just do a couple quick rapid fires
Mhm.
of some things that have been happening. I just want to hear your. I'll let you take it wherever. First time you heard about this, what your take is on it. Um, so I'll let you take it wherever you want, like a minute or two each.
Mhm.
First is the this Fanatics Live. We're in the Fanatics Live era now. We have the community started with a whole bunch of small um, community streamers. It really kind of built this card community.
Mhm.
Now VeeFriends comes in with their own kind of shop, and now it's 3-4 times a week. So your thoughts on Fanatics Live?
Okay, so the thoughts at first when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to watch every second of Fanatics Live. This is amazing. Like, I don't want to miss anything out." And so that was it. But now I've kind of taken more of a step back. Like, the Fanatics Live is great. Like, it's fun. People get in there, have a good time, buy some cards, they pull some fire cards, everyone gets hyped, goes on the timeline, whatever. But I want to say to the people, don't give in to like the FOMO. Like at the end of the day, you still have a life to live. You still have goals to do. Like it got to a point where I was in the gym and I would be like listening on my headphones to the Fanatics Live, and in between sets I'm pulling out my phone, and it's like there's a line that's like you can't compromise on your goals and your life. And not that VeeFriends is asking you to, but it's just very easy to get sucked into it of not wanting to miss out. And the giveaways are fun and it's great. But we can't compromise the things that we want to just feed into the FOMO. Like it's okay to miss a Fanatics Live. Like it's okay. I don't want to get like the knives, like the tangled meme where it's you get all the knives at your neck and you're like, what take has you like this? Like this is my take. Sorry, Josh and Tom. Like love you guys, but it's okay if you miss a stream. Like you're not gonna get ostracized from the community. You're not gonna miss anything you miss is gonna get blown up on your timeline, and you're gonna see it the moment you open up your phone. So yes, be a part of it, take part of it. It's all fun, it's all great. Check with yourself if you're crossing a line to where it's hindering you in other aspects of your life. Is what I have to say.
I love that. Burn Island.
Burn Island. I'm excited. I'm excited to see the treasure chest, and like we talked about on the space, I think it's gonna basically be like the book games exchange, where like the example I gave was you're not gonna know what you're gonna get. That's what's specifically out of the chest, but there may be the cool cat's chest, and so it's like there's 7 cool cats in here, ranging of different rarities, different traits, and things like that. It's gonna cost 7 book games to get in. 5 people are gonna do it, and it's gonna or however many cool cats I said there's gonna be in the chest, and it's just gonna get randomized, and all of a sudden you're gonna get a random cool cat. So you're not gonna know which one, but you know you're burning for that. My take personally is I hope that it's not like, oh, there's just a treasure chest and you throw something in and expect something out that's like equal or greater value. Because I think that's where a lot of the hurt comes when people set expectations and they get let down. And not to say that it is or is not that VeeFriends is setting the expectations, but we just have such high hopes for it that I don't want to see someone burn something that they think is worth $2,000. That great, now I'm going to get something back that's $3,000, and you don't, and now it's like, oh, treasure chests suck. Like I posted something the other day about I think VeeFriends being like too far under the microscope, and I just think that's why is that people have expectations and it doesn't really hit exactly what they were expecting. You're like, oh, like that was wrong or this was wrong. Like if you're looking for a problem, you're gonna find a problem.
Mm.
And you got to just like I said, let them cook. Like they're trying new things. Some burns have been great, some haven't been so great. But Gary always says it's a baby. It's not even 3 years that the project is alive. Burn Island is not even like maybe it's a year now. You got like we got to just let them do what they need to do, like test things and see what sticks and what works.
Yeah, I think that was a great call out. I'm surprised I missed that tweet. Bring it up here because it was a great one. And Gary talks a lot about entitlement. There's and this I don't want to say masses, but there's a lot of new people coming in now.
Yeah.
And there was a few weeks there, and we're talking on February 4th, 2024. There's a few weeks there where after everyone's post, people are posting their wallet address, like asking for
Right.
like handouts. And Gary plays Santa Claus sometimes and blesses people.
Right.
But to expect it,
Right.
people just handing you things, and obviously you mentioned the unbelievable kindness that's going on now. Like there is that,
Right.
but to come to the table with your hands out it's just a bad look, I think, for someone coming in for the first time
A
trying to
hundred, a
figure out
hundred
what this
percent.
we're all about.
100%. And don't get me wrong, like I'm completely empathetic and get like I couldn't imagine buying like a gift goat for $120,000 that's now selling for like 10 grand. Like it's it's rough, right? Everybody is getting in at different times. And so maybe somebody that's in the community that's new, that's like all gung ho and this is great and whatever, that's come in from Fanatics. Well, it's like you don't have the pain that other people do when they believed earlier but then got burned. But then in the same token, just because you got burned doesn't mean someone else can't come in and have an unbelievable experience.
Mm.
Um, so we all need to be aware of people's situations are all different. And so to try to imprint your good or bad experience on someone else, like be there in the community, learn, and let people kind of go through their process as they go through it. And just understand when people are putting out negative comments and just poo-pooing on the project for lack of a better term, 99% of it's coming from a place of hurt financially. And
A
and
a
it's rough.
100%, 100%. And one of my most interesting topics of conversation that I have with people all across the board is the gift goat situation.
Mhm.
um, because a lot of people did, Gary's great at hyping things up, and he's great, and sometimes he gets what people say too excited.
Right.
And he says things. So the obviously the most famous one, something is going to be in your driveway.
Right.
So there's a ton of empathy. But what do you say? Like, let me go to the other side. What do you say? Like, how do you know you only get burnt if you sell right now?
Right.
Like, you truly believed it, and he's been on the top of a mountain screaming from a microphone. This is a 55-year thing.
This is
This is
not
what I'm trying
Chris
to build.
Flip. This is not right.
Like, let's go to that take. Like, what do you think about that? Like, you only get hurt on a roller coaster if you jump off in the middle.
Right. And no, that's a great point. And so for me, it's like again, people just need to evaluate where they're at and learn from it. Like Gary said from the beginning, 8 times a week, do not invest money you cannot afford to lose. And so that kind of plays back into my thoughts with like Fanatics. Like Gary's all about everyone, you got to be at this stream, you got to do this, but like I'm saying, don't invest time you're not worried about being productive. Like when it comes to like what you said, jumping off, if you invested money that you couldn't afford to lose, learn from it, and like it's just rough. Like it's tough for me to speak from it because I don't own a VF1 now at like close to the cheapest point. So I get that if someone wants to be like, oh, you don't know what it's like I've never lost over 100 grand on a trade or something like that. So like you said, you only lose when you sell. But if somebody has completely lost trust in the jockey, like Gary says, I can understand why. Like why they'd sell. Not and so it's just again like everybody's got to make the plays that's right for them, and we're all the biggest thing, we're all just trying our best in everything that we do. Like you with the podcast, you're trying your best, you show up, you get people, you have great conversations. Me with what I'm doing, I'm trying my best, I'm putting out content when I can, trying to post more, trying to make more positive impacts, things like that. We're all just trying our best. So if you're hurt financially, I get it, but I don't think negatively attacking Gary or the project is the way to go about it. I think what you can do is use your platform to educate others. Hey guys, I got burned this bad. Not saying don't invest, but don't invest things you can't afford to lose. Here's my experience. Things like that. Um Use your negative again, back to the negative experience. Use your negative experience to be a blessing to somebody else. And I
Mm,
think it's all going to come back to you anyway.
I love it. It's a very, very intriguing conversation and something that, I'm writing a book on all of this, and I think the goats are such a very interesting, it's a very interesting storyline that's obviously evolving.
Mhm.
Um, what character do you think you need to spend more time with?
That's so funny. That's a great question. Because for me, I don't have like the character that's me. Like we have so many people that have chosen their character. The character I guess that I choose for me would be like Patient Panda because I minted a VF2. So that was like crazy, super hype about that. But to spend more time about, I don't think I've spent enough time figuring it out and thinking about it. But I guess at the top of my mind, like I don't even know. Something maybe patience, and it's funny, like maybe the patient panda, and not in a sense of being patient with what I'm building, which is a lot about what the character is about, like oh, be patient in what you're working on. But I think patience with others, like understanding that people may not think the way I do or as fast as I do or understand things the way that I do. And so having the patience versus getting almost frustrated. Like that would be my
Mm,
flaw. I know that I need to work on like my quick reactions of getting frustrated. Um, but it's not out of a place of anger. It's out of a place of like I want you to like understand this. Like I want you to get this. Things like that. So maybe patience for that reason.
I love it. Great, great answer. Great answer. Um, and it's something that evolves, right?
Yeah.
Like anything else. Um, two more quick ones before we get to our last segment.
Okay.
uh, we talked about the kindness, we talked about the amazing things that happen within the community, and some people are more out in front about it, but we know, and you talk to a lot of people too, like there's so much that goes on behind
Yeah.
closed doors. There's a lot of people that are very humble, like don't want things blasted out there. I'm curious, is there anyone now that you have this microphone right now that you could blow the whistle on in a good way to share someone that deserves some roses?
Yeah. There definitely are. For me and what I've been building, I really appreciate the people that I've been able to go to for advice and help me build it out. Major shout outs. I want to rattle off a couple of people. Parzival has been super encouraging, helpful when I was going on some job interviews, would talk to me, give me some basically walk through some stuff. Just and we've never like really talked before. We just kind of got I don't even remember how we got connected, but it just like instantly clicked. He's a great mentor and friend in the space and in the community. Same with Rarity Dale in the same exact way. Um, and he's actually sponsored me to go through a class to help me be a better leader, which is just unbelievable. And sorry, Dale, if you didn't want that out there, but it means a lot to me. Um, Danny, we've talked about. I talk to him multiple times a week, and it's crazy. We live in complete different time zones, so we just make it work because the friendship is so real. A guy, I don't know, not a lot of you know him, I don't think. And maybe Lemmy Wicks, if you've seen him flipping on the VF floor, that guy is another breed, man. He just a great dude. Have so many great conversations. Such a good dude. Has personally donated to me and what I'm building. So I'm unbelievably grateful for him. Um, and two more. One would be Carl Saxon, the man. Like
Love Carl.
an absolute legend. If you don't know him, get to know him. He's just one of the most genuine people I have ever met. I there are just some people that I don't know, like there's something about these types of people that just draw you to them. And like when I say that, there's someone that pops into your mind where you're like, this person could not talk to me for a year, and there's just something about me that's like pulling me to him to like be close with, and like that's Carl, just unbelievably great dude. And then the last one is Papa Steve. I don't know if you guys know him. He's kind of taking a little bit of a step back while he's building out his business down here. But we actually met at the National year one. So all because Gary basically paid for me to fly out there. And so he's one of the people that came up to me, and it's funny, I joke about it with him all the time. He came up to me, he's like, "Yo, what's your name?" And I was like, "Dalton." He's like, "Yeah, Dalton Tice." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, we follow each other on Twitter." And it was just funny, like I mess with him about that all the time. And so I was like, "What's your name?" Because I didn't know like really who he was. I just kind of followed him, and he showed it me, and I was like, "Oh, like Papa Steve! Like I love Papa Steve!" And so he ended up hosting me 3 times while every time I would go to New York, bro. I cannot say enough about Steve. Would pick me up from the airport, take me to the airport when I was leaving. It was like an hour away. Never charged me anything. Let me stay at his house with him and his family, like as close to brothers as you can be without being blood related. And he was opening up a business, was planning on moving to the other coast of Florida, and literally moved 10 minutes away from me and where I am just because of our relationship. Opened up his business there, is working on building that. Um, and now I've been the biggest impact to getting him back into church, having a relationship with God, bringing that blessings into his wife and his family and his children. And so literally as close to family as it gets. Like I was just with Steve today at church.
I love that.
It's amazing. So I'm just
Amazing.
another reason why I'm so blessed and grateful for VeeFriends and what it is in the community.
Great dude. Met his family too at Comic Con. And
Yeah.
here's a flex. I met Carl, but I met Carl's parents at VeeCon,
So
which
did
was
I.
um so yeah, it's just so funny,
Yeah.
and how we're gonna not only have our core friends, but like the generations, like the parents, and then the kids that are gonna come with them in years to come.
Right.
Quick little, just I usually try to sprinkle this in at the beginning, but we just got into it so quick. I do want to throw a little gratitude your way. I just want to just obviously thank you for coming on, but just to be a light of positivity that's sharing positive things, in the feed. Gary says, you find what you're looking for.
Hmm.
Social media's empty pipes, and you're filling it with amazing stories of just little examples that take next to nothing
Right.
to change some people's day life. You don't know where that ripple effect is going to end, but I love seeing it because it's just a reminder, not necessarily to go out and to write a note to someone or give flowers or whatever, but you could, like Gary says,
Right.
take that step to do something nice for somebody, a
Hmm.
stranger, someone you know. It's just that reminder. So I love to see that, because everyone can give their own roses in whatever way is most comfortable for them. But it's just that reminder
Yeah.
out in your face. And then
Right.
obviously love it, everything you're doing for the community. Whether your Detective Dalton hat is on or not. I see you have your Siegelman stable. I knew you would be wearing it, so
I saw that.
I had to throw on mine.
I saw that.
just for the occasion. So thank you.
Hmm.
Last segment is called Micro Macro Spitfire. So answer. I'm going to throw a lot of rapid fire your way. Answer as quick and general as you'd like in the macro, or get your microscope out. So first question is, if someone's getting into VeeFriends today for the first time, who do they need to follow? What's one person they need to follow immediately?
Me. I'm just kidding. Um, I mean, yes, me. I'm very active on the timeline, very educated. I know what I'm talking about, and I'm, like you said, observant, and I see a lot of stuff. So, and not even to be kidding. Like, if I'm really serious. If there's anybody listening and joining for the first time, I leave my DMs open. Like, I love helping people. I love talking about it, and so I could not encourage you more. If you're hearing this for the first time, even if you're in VeeFriends and you know me, but we've never actually DM'd or never really talked, please do it. I'd love to get to know you. Love to talk to you. Spit VeeFriend stuff, and let's make it happen.
Let's go. Favorite teacher you had, and one reason why?
Favorite teacher. Okay, that was probably Mr. Badger. This old dude. This guy was had to have been the biggest hippie in the 70s. He was my sixth grade basketball teacher, which then became my freshman year English teacher. And this dude just like talking about like Honey Badger don't give a F. Mr. Badger don't give a F. Like this
Mhm.
guy was the most chilled, relaxed dude of all time. Um, and every day he'd be like, "Oh, like guess what I'm doing for lunch? Like going to have dinner or going to have lunch with the most beautiful woman in the world." Like just could not talk more highly of his wife. Everything about him, kind, sweet, caring, just a great teacher overall.
I love that. Favorite movie?
So it's funny. If you know me, I need to do a lot of catching up on my movie. I'm not a crazy movie buff. Like never seen Star Wars, never seen the Harry Potters, never seen Die Hard. Like all the big names. Like people are like, "What? How have you not seen that?" So I'm actually in the process of watching the John Wick series with my mom. Um, but favorite movie? That's interesting. I've never really had an answer, but I really liked The Shack. It was very impactful Christian faith-based movie,
All right.
but very good.
Love it. Your favorite piece of VeeFriends physical memorabilia, not cards.
Probably just the Series 1 boxes because there's a big joke in the community that, and thanks to Danny, every single time there's a stream, Danny types in the comment section, Dalton, open your V1 box. So I minted one, won one on the blind auction, and have just been holding since. I'd like to not sell it and be in a financial position to where I can open it and enjoy it and see what I have. And as we know, there's still a lot of big cards out there, so that would probably be my favorite piece.
What VeeFriend character needs to be elected as president this year in 2024?
President of what?
The United States.
President of the United States. That's a good one. I want to give a good answer here.
Any answer is a good answer. We're talking about made up characters.
I I don't know. The first one that jumped to my mind was the honey badger. Like that dude running the show is you don't want
Let's
to mess
go.
with that guy.
Paper Hands Pony or the koala?
For me, I think the pony. I think the pony throughout book games has been slightly valued higher. And I think I think the koala is going to be tied in with the keynote koala. So when the experiences end at the end of this year, like the koala is holding the thing that says the briefcase says 2025. So I think there may be keynotes, or there may be if they do another VeeCon, a special keynote for the koala holders, or something like that. So I think there may be value there, but in speaking, but I think for a financial return, I fully believe that Paper Hands Pony is going to get you a V1. And if you believe in the project and you believe that V1 is the grail, I think that's the play.
VeeCon 2025, yes or no? If so, where?
Yes, I think they'd be crazy not to. I know it's expensive, but every single person in the community will agree unanimously that VeeCon is the alpha and is the reason VeeFriends is as amazing as it is. Um, and where? I would not want it to be in Miami because I like to travel. So I don't know, I think maybe like where the Mavs play in Dallas, or maybe where the Hawks play, or the Caesar Superdome. What's the Atlanta where the Falcons play?
Mercedes Benz.
That one. I would love to see it there.
I love it. That's it. That'd be great, Atlanta.
Yeah.
My so far my favorite answer since we've moved to 2025. I asked Daniel, and he said Rainbow Planet. um,
I'd love it. I'd love it to go to
uh,
Planet.
would you rather have a 2 hour group dinner experience with Gary, so you and 9 other people, or a 15-minute one-on-one?
Do I get to pick the other 9 people? Or
Sure. And if he was here right now, he had to answer truthfully, what is one question that you would ask him?
oh man, you should have texted me. I wanted to have. Oh, I wish I had a good one asked. It's just a yes or no.
Whatever your question is.
Will we see royalties paid out over when the SEC and whatever like are, because I believe that the people that buy into VeeFriends love it and get attached to it and they don't want to sell. And so the only way you make profit off an investment is if it pays you back. And so I don't want to, me personally, if I buy a VF1, I don't want to have to sell it to someone for more than I bought it for that be the only way that I've made money off it. So I would like to hold it, keep it in my wallet, pass it on to my kids, and get royalties of the things that come of it. So will we see that being played out? And I think if there was an answer there, yes or no, we'd see a lot of people join or a lot of people leave.
Good question. Detective Dalton Tice, appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Always great to chat, and I think this is going to be just the first of many chats on here. So thank you for coming on, and we'll talk soon, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you.